Welcome to What Drives You. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, invest in you. Spend 3 to 5% of your income on your personal growth. I pay attention to shows that people refer back to, and often in talking about spending money on our personal growth, people will ask, hey, what was it your dad used to say, Kevin? What percent should you spend on your personal growth? Well, the answer is 3 to 5%. And my dad was Dan Miller, famed author of 48 Days to the Work and Life You Love. And it was in 2017, he published a blog at 48days.com, his website, titled, Your Success is Guaranteed If You Do This. Well, in it, he cited, it was actually a message from Brian Tracy, who turned him on to the idea, saying that successful people, the ones that we listen to and follow, they habitually invest at least 3 to 5% of their income directly toward their personal growth. Many, of course, spend far more. And as you'll hear, what follows is generally your income is going to increase as a result of that, and you'll be able to spend more and more each year. But I just really like the tangible metric, and other people did as well. So if you make $7,000 per month, you can be looking for $350 or so to spend on your personal growth every month. And it really helps the intentionality. So I brought back this episode that I did on it with my dad. It's back from when I hosted the Ziglar Show. You'll hear that referenced. And you can still find all the gold that my dad, Dan Miller, has to offer at 48days.com. When I'm not having these conversations on a podcast on human potential, I'm working directly with people on their human potential. You can connect with me at kevinmiller.co. Here are a few sponsors. They help make the show possible. Then drive with me and my dad to consider investing in you, spending 3 to 5% of your income on your personal growth. Let's see what we can learn for ourselves today.
Okay. Well, Dad, fun to have you in here. First live person in the studio for the video recording, which we have not done before, which folks you can see again at the Ziglar YouTube channel as of the posting of this. But today we're talking about investing in yourself. We were talking about this at dinner because it's a blog and a podcast that you just posted, and I wanted to dive in because this is exactly Ziglar material, of course. I mean, growing up with you, you talked a lot about investing in yourself, and it was really just, I guess, by proxy part of what we did. But as I thought about this big picture and talking to the masses, my wondering was, in general, most people do go to college. That's an investment in self. After that, is that often where it stops?
That's it. There are a lot of times people who actually brag about the fact that they haven't read a book since they graduated from college. And I hear that from attorneys, people who are professionals even, which just breaks my heart. There ought to be a continued investment in personal development. And without that, I think your success is pretty well going to flatline.
Well, so when you look at just exposure to investing in yourself, now, you made it a little more specific on the blog. But let's start off with just the concept of investing in yourself. Okay, in what areas? What are the general areas for overall? Well, like Ziglar, has the wheel of life. It would probably be a good place to start there. Of, okay, what are ways to invest in myself that you do see people partaking of consistently, but a lot of us are missing?
Well, in what I'm focused on right now, it really is this process of personal development. Not just things that we would do to improve our health or relationships, although the carryover there is inevitable, but to really be strategic about investing in oneself. A lot of times people think, well, I don't have any extra money this month, so I can't buy a book. I can't go to that conference. I can't go to the seminar. I can't buy an online course. Those are the kind of things that I think we ought to have an exact budget line item so we see it as an opportunity to invest in ourselves. And frankly, this is an area where we're going to get a compounded return unlike anything else. I think people invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Those are things for conservative people to just kind of protect the money they already have. But with what we're talking about here, this is a way to exponentially increase your level of success and income. And as we'll talk about, your health and relationships as byproducts as well.
Okay. So there is, and I've talked, I know you have as well. We have a lot of people who digest a ton of information, knowledge. They're listening to all these podcasts, they're listening to all these blogs, they're reading all these books, good stuff. But is that, when you look at really making an investment, can somebody sit there and say, yeah, well, hey, I listened to a podcast today, I'm good?
Well,
especially if it's Dan
really,
Miller's podcast.
You really jumped ahead conceptually here to how we have to break this down, because access to knowledge or even paying for knowledge is not enough. And there are people who are just knowledge junkies. They just continue to go to seminars and conferences, or they read 103 books last year. Well, it might have been better to have read 10 and really digested them and made the application, because we have to go beyond knowledge. Knowledge is not enough. Knowledge won't change your life at all. You have to move beyond that to understanding and application. So that's a really big point. I didn't know we were going to bring that up.
I didn't either.
But that's okay.
That's just what came to mind.
You're really right. You can be just an information junkie. But the first thing is to recognize this principle of investing 3% of your income back into yourself.
Okay, so where do we get out of college, we go get a job, and I think a lot of people, I would assume, in the regular workplace, and even as self-employed folks like you and I are, I mean, there are things that we have to do to stay up with the times, to progress there. But when you're talking about investing in yourself, so we were just at lunch with my partner Randy, and he just got back from a conference, and that was a question I asked. Obviously, you can go to things where you are you're getting information, increasing your knowledge, but is that necessarily an investment in ourselves? It's kind of like getting what are we talking when you're talking about? I think you mentioned personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a specific investing in myself, even as opposed to going to a conference where I learned how this widget works or how to apply this thing to my business. It may not be personal growth. Are you really trying to, in this format, steer it towards something that is growing me, Kevin Miller, as an individual, to be better tomorrow than I am today? That's
right. And that's a very individualized process. This like going to a smorgasbord for lunch where you have 200 items out there. It's not a matter of, I just need 4 things, so I'll take 4 things just arbitrarily. No, you choose carefully what you need, what will benefit you most. So this is a very individualized process, but a lot of people never step up to the smorgasbord at all in this arena. They just go day to day, and they don't do the little things that could dramatically increase their level of success. So let me give you an example. Let's take it just at the bottom of the barrel here in terms of where somebody is economically. They don't have to be, making millions of dollars. If somebody's making $12 an hour, that's roughly $25,000 a year income. Now, that's not a whole lot, but my recommendation is they use 3% of that income, and it's easy to calculate monthly. That's $58 a month. So you can listen to podcasts, which are free. You can, use a library, but I would encourage you to start building your own success library. So here's as an example, I would suggest that people get See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Those two immediately, and my recommendations are.
Hold them up for the video viewers.
There you go.
You got it. There's
right off Kevin's shelf.
That's an old copy. Actually, this is a new copy. See the top. Old copy I talked about recently, 1964 edition, I think, of How to Win Friends and Influence People, that my dad, I think, required me to read.
Absolutely. And what I suggest is not to go to the library and just borrow them and read them and take them back. Buy them. It changes your mindset when you start building your own personal library. And with that, even somebody making $12 an hour can start to change the trajectory of their life. You could, with $58 a month, you should subscribe to Success, Inc., Fast Company, Entrepreneur, a couple things like that. As we move up,
$48, you can join 48 Days Eagles. There's a good one. Okay, which literally is, folks, and I think I gave you that in the intro. But let's talk about that, a book, because I do think we get in the habit as a culture, and especially in the personal development world, where we are going through, exposing ourselves to great stuff. We are viewing it, reading, listening, whatever. But what are we doing with that? It seems like you could, and maybe you do with people, that you could almost have some best practices for taking in information and actually doing something with it. I know with a book that if I just read, if I have a book and I don't have something to write with, I feel it's like it's impotent. It's just I can't do it. I got to be able to write in the book or mark the pages or write something down. I mean, it's a way to help me digest it and actually get something from that? Is that something, just from a daily habit thing that you do with books, with podcasts, with blogs? If you're at lunch with somebody who you're gleaning from, some things that you can do, easy habits of not just listening, not just reading, but actually doing the physiological. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. There's got to be that. I go to a lot of conferences, and I go not anticipating something's going to change my life or business dramatically, but expecting to come away with 2 or 3 ideas that could dramatically add to the success path that I'm on. I'm very open about the fact, Kevin, as you know, that when people come to 48 days events or purchase products, they get a 10x return. So if somebody invests $20 in a book, I expect them to get a 10 times return in the next 12 months. So that's true at any level. So if I go to a conference and I pay $2,000 to go to that conference, I really expect that I'm going to get 1 or 2 ideas that are going to add $20,000 to my income over the next 12 months. I just go with that anticipation and find it again and again and again. That bears itself out. But that's by applying the things. It's not just by having a new piece of head knowledge or just by buying somebody's materials in a grocery bag and setting them on a shelf when I get home. That's by taking massive action on the things that I'm going to do.
Okay, so on that, would that not be a relevant thing for all of us to do, to look at over the past month, week, whatever, let's say past month, how many good value blogs have you read? How many podcasts have you listened to? How many books have you read? Did you attend a seminar or webcast, whatever? Are you part of a membership, community that you actually went in and partook or engaged with in or not? So now at the end of the 30 days, that'd be a good journal exercise for me in the morning. What did I change as a result of that? Positive entertainment, it's great. Inspiration, hope is good. But if I did not change, it seems like that's a great question for us all to be continually asking ourselves.
It is. Kevin, you probably remember this was years ago when I was doing physical seminars. We would have them in hotel conference rooms on the weekends and things were going well there. And I started to hear about these things called online seminars. And I thought, would people really pay just to pick up the telephone at the time? It was before we even had slick internet access. But to pick up the telephone, would they pay to participate in a seminar? Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I did was look around to see who is doing that well. And there was a guy, his name is Alex Mendozian, still a player out there. He had a course called Teleseminar Secrets. It was $1,800. That was a lot of money.
Now you can tell him what I said about it.
Well, I think your encouragement was that you don't spend the money. We can figure this out. But my theory has always been find somebody who's doing it really well and pay for their expertise to shorten the learning curve. So we did that. $1,800, went through his course. And one of the things that he told us to do was ask our audience how much they would pay. I had anticipated charging for a teleseminar that people would just listen to, maybe $7 or $9, something like that. We asked our audience, and the feedback we got led us to charge for that very first teleseminar we did $69. The night we did that seminar was 70 minutes. And the night we did that, not only did we cover all of our expenses incurred in that, but we put a clean $18,000 in our bank account. If you remember the original cost, it was $1,800. Mm-hmm. That's one of those exact 10 times return on investing and then doing what they said to do. And we got a 10 times return instantly. There are other examples. I mean, you've been with me to Mark Victor Hansen conferences, Megabook University. I went to the very first one of those in 2002 in Los Angeles. We took our friends, Dave and Sharon Ramsey, went with your mom and me to that. We sat there, listened, came back, and just did. It was $695 to go to that conference, which again, back then, that was still a lot of money to go and flights out there and hotels and all. So it was an investment. But I came back and just started doing what this gracious, generous man who sold a whole lot of copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul said to do. I went back to that conference in 2006 and was on stage with Mark Victor Hansen and got to tell what happened in those 4 years in between, because I had sold over $2 million of my own little 3-ring binder, 48 Days to the Work You Love, and had 2 book deals that came together in that period of time as well. That's what happens. That's why I believe so much from my personal experience, invest in my personal development, and I see the return come back multiplied over.
Okay, so let's talk about literally the money of that. So and folks, again, you can go find this at the blog. I believe it's a March 21st, 2017, that it's posted at 48days.com. Go to the blog and you can find this and look through some of the little calculations you do monetarily. But basically you're saying for those folks who are, you capped it at 50,000. If you're making 50,000 or making under 50,000, that you're taking 3%.
Yes.
Of your income and doing that. Now, something that we just talked about at lunch was in relation to a product. I can't remember what we were talking about and how much we were charging for it. And somebody made the statement of, even if you don't need the money, charge people for it, even if we're going to give it to charity, just so that they will feel the weight of that investment and therefore engage or participate. Talk about that a little bit, even from an exercise of needing to spend money. There is a relevance just to the money. We're going, it's not just the spirit we're talking about. You're really talking about cash and what that does.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it totally does. Having people invest in the process changes the mindset. That's why I recommend people buy those 2 original books, not just get them out of the library. Buy them. It changes how you feel about engaging with the content there. And the same thing is true at every level. Yeah, I have a mastermind. We were talking at lunch where people often say that they're getting in the mastermind what they had looked for in a church, the dynamics of understanding, mutual accountability, challenging each other, growing together, sharing life together. They get that there and in a way that they had never experienced in a church. Now, that being said, the irony is they're paying a lot of money to have that experience. And when we think that in churches, everything has to be free, people expect that. But it's a counterintuitive kind of idea, knowing that if people don't pay anything, there's no real engagement. They don't value it. Wow.
That's funny. I mean, how much more would I get out of church if I had to pay $50 to get in the door?
Well, there you go. We have a hard time putting
There's a good
idea
idea for somebody. New church, okay? This is the church of results.
That's right. You got to pay to be a member.
The results-driven church. Can we do that instead of purpose-driven?
Absolutely. Well, we know the principle works. There are certain applications in life and in our culture that we'd have a hard time putting it in place. And as a business guy, I see it work again and again and again. And one thing too, that we sometimes, people think, well, how long do I have to do this? And incidentally, you mentioned that investing 3% is my recommendation up to about $50,000 a year. At that point, I recommend that you increase to 5%, just a little bit more. Now, I never recommend you increase it more, even if you're making millions, but keep it at 5%. So that you continue to do that. And we see that if people continue to do that, the success continues. At this point in my life, it's a principle. Like a lot of people understand the principle of tithing. And they really believe, and rightfully so, that if you break that principle, it would somehow impede or stop or stifle God's blessings flowing through you. I believe in this principle every bit as much. That's why I don't want to break the cycle. It doesn't matter if I try to talk myself into the fact that I don't need it anymore. I mean, I went to a conference not too long ago, and I just thought it was a conference that I wanted to go to. And I paid the regular price, got a ticket, sat in the back of the room, and I had people coming up saying, "Hey, Dan, when are you going to speak?" I'm not. And they couldn't understand that I was there just as a regular participant as they were. I do that all the time because I believe in the value of that investment. I don't want to break the cycle. Yeah. I'm afraid that if I stopped investing in myself, it would stagnate my own success. And we find that people who are ultra successful, I mean, people like Richard Branson and Elon Musk, these guys spend big bucks to go to conferences and seminars and hang out, spend time with people who are high achievers because they realize the ongoing power of doing that. Even if they don't need to increase where they are financially, they recognize the value of doing that.
Well, and I've talked about that on the show, that you as a father exemplified that. You and mom both did to me. Well, really even more later in life as an adult, as I've seen you achieve levels of success that a lot of people would desire to be at, that you did not end up there and say, I'm good, and now you just stay home all the time, that you were constantly investing in yourself. And I think Tom in a recent show was talking about his dad, Zig Ziglar. So here's a guy who's influenced more people than just about anybody, and yet he was the first one to be reading, but he was always talking about the books that he's reading, books of people who, of course, said that he was their mentor, and he's reading their books to see what he can glean in that concept. So you're talking about a discipline and a habit on one hand. Back to the money. I do want to hit one thing there. Well, kind of an aspect, we were talking about Sabbath, which is something you're talking about with your mastermind. And Terry and I, my wife, your daughter-in-law, in getting away from family sometimes, taking a sabbatical is what we would talk about, getting away to recharge, and how we had to shift our mindset from and feeling guilty. Like that's a luxury for mommy and daddy to do that. And not realizing, no, that's makes us better parents. We had that exemplified, and I'll share this testimony from my 12-year-old son, Ian, who you've been playing games with. And it was a month ago or so, and Terry and I were squabbling literally at the table. And he, at some point, got in the conversation. He said, "You guys need to go away together." I said, "What? You need to go on vacation. However many months ago, when you guys went to Cancun, you came back, you were different. Will you please go away?" I thought, wow.
That's cool.
That's cool. So my premise there, though, is to say, do you find that in talking on this topic with people or in viewing the culture, that a lot of times we get caught in the, on one hand, you may have people who just aren't willing to do the work, which I want to talk about in a second. But on one hand, people feeling like it's a luxury.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's just like, I know you're very invested in the health process, health and wellness. You want people to be weller. Which is our new word.
Yes.
Yes. But a lot of times people think, well, that's just a luxury. When I really get on top, then I can start taking supplements. Then I can eat right. Then I can get massages regularly.
Join a gym, get a personal trainer when I can afford it.
When I can afford
the rich
it.
people.
Well, that just, pushes things down the railroad track, because it's like the chicken and the egg. You can't get there unless you make the investment now to start that process. That's why what we're talking about here, this is not something that when you're making $100,000, then you start doing all these cool things we're talking about. No, I'm talking about if you're making $7.50 an hour, you start doing this, because it'll accelerate your progress like nothing else I've ever experienced.
Okay. So that's on the one hand side of getting away from a luxury mentality, that this is a necessity. It's like taking your vitamins. It's getting sleep, getting water.
Kevin, you remember a time when I went through a really horrendous financial experience, owed the IRS hundreds of thousands of dollars, of just devastating experience. In that period of time, I borrowed a car from our old friend Danny Barron in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Borrowed a car. It was just an old junk rattle trap.
It's embarrassing.
It was. The air conditioner didn't work. The power windows didn't work in there. The radio didn't work. And so what did I do? I carried a battery-operated cassette player with me. That was more important to me than having the air conditioning work. I didn't care about that. I could sweat and still be okay. But I knew I needed to feed my mind positive, pure, clean, inspirational, motivational material, or I was like a garden that was going to have weeds start growing, and they multiply exponentially as well. I needed to be intentional about planting those seeds of positive, good things in my mind. So I would rather have a car today where the air conditioning doesn't work or the power windows don't work. As long as I have a sound system in there, I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on that, we talked about just the hard work, and you led off, I think, in your blog and probably in your podcast with the hard work that people, and it's not to diss the people, but we have a cultural issue today of people who are not investing in themselves, that want the shortcut. We always talk about the microwave society that we're in. And you had somebody recently say, "Hey, instead of having to read your book, is there a shortcut to it?" No, there's not. And it brought me to the Malcolm Gladwell Outliers book and perspective of, it feels like you're breaking down. If you want to be success, it is doing the hard work. There's no shortcuts. And then you become the outlier, the person who just did more work than anyone else, but you're going to put your 10,000 hours in. That's what you jumped off with there, I think. And that seems to be, from your perspective, something that needs to be gotten. There's no shortcut. You've got to do the work if you're wanting to get ahead. And people are so quick to not be open.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, they want to run a marathon. How do you run a marathon? You don't just show up the day of the event. You start training months and months and months in advance. So if you can run around a block, that's fine. You start with that, and then you increase from there. You've got to put in the work. I mean, we're told that if you put a turkey, we have turkeys on our property. Sometimes people are surprised to see these great big wild beasts on our property. But we're told that if you put a turkey in an 8 by 8 foot enclosure, just a fence, you can have a fence that's only 4 feet high, totally open on the top. So we're like in a room, totally open on the top. We know turkeys can fly, but that turkey will stay in there and never leave there because they can't fly straight up. They have to have a running area that's at least 10 to 12 feet long. They have to get the momentum going before they can fly. I've heard Zig talk about, getting a plane off the ground. It takes tremendous amount of energy until you get up in the air. Yeah. Then you can back off, or like pumping water in an old hand pump. Once the water starts to flow, you can back off. Same thing is true here. You do need to put in the work. And then it may be the first few weeks or months where it's like, wow, am I really experiencing anything? But you got to believe that those principles are taking root. If you are taking action and applying the things that you're hearing, reading, seeing.
So sometimes in understanding something, it helps to go back into the history, look back, look into the past and understand some of those truths. We talk about health and wellness, and we can go back and see how much better off in a lot of ways we were back when we did have to grow our own gardens. We did have fresh food. We did have cycles of food, certain times when we had a food, then times when we didn't, almost a fasting, and the benefits of that we don't have today, because you can have anything you want, anytime, anywhere, anyhow. And the negative effects of that, of course, processed food, yada, yada. So in that sense, I'm wondering, would you see the same thing with this, that there was a time, and I'll just pick on entertainment, before information age, before TV, before the entertainment, where, let's take the end of the day, for instance, what else was there to do but crack open the Bible by the fireplace or candlelight to talk with each other? Are we seeing some ramifications of so much entertainment and having left behind what used to be more of a norm?
Yeah. I grew up in a very strict religious home. We didn't have radio and TV. Boy, poor little Danny Boy Miller. What that did is drove me to books. Books have been the one most magical thing that opened new worlds of opportunity for me. There's nothing that comes close second. It's books. So I experienced that because we didn't have those things that were seen as advantages. You just gave me a book, Kevin, called Food Rules. And in there's all kinds of cute little tips in there. One of them is eat all the treats you want as long as you make them yourself. If you want to have fried chicken, make it. Go through the work that it takes to have fried, rather than just whipping through and getting
Save $1 billion in healthcare right there. Make your own fried chicken.
Yeah, rather than getting it through the window of your car, where you get it delivered in 30 seconds. If you want to have ice cream, make it. If you want to have candy, make it. Can you imagine how that would slow down? So there is a valid principle there. Things that really have value, that are good for us, take time and effort to build them into our lives. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like good habits. Once it becomes a habit, it's like brushing your teeth. My gosh, if I didn't spend 2 hours a day reading and listening to positive material, I'd feel like I hadn't brushed my teeth.
In this thought of looking back at the cultural shifts, I thought about Ray Miller, your dad, my grandpa, and he had a study. And that was it seemed like that was a part of his life. That was an expectation. And I've seen some, things posted on Facebook, whatever, with the proliferation of man caves, where you have your Barcalounger and your 50-foot TV and your fridge full of beers. Can we get rid of some man caves and go back to some studies? We've traded them, in essence. Again, going back to entertainment over investing in oneself, bettering oneself, and a lack of personal growth ultimately is what you're hitting on.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of your grandpa, mm-hmm. Ray Miller, my dad, he had a 6th grade education. Now, I use education lightly there because we know education happens in a lot of ways, in addition to just sitting in a seat in the classroom and regurgitating what somebody says up front. But he went to school to the 6th grade and then started working. But as he developed personally and as a pastor and leader of other people, he had a massive study, mm-hmm. lots of books, and a dedicated space to just studying and improving himself, personal development.
Okay, so in that, you may not have listeners out there, you may not have a place you can put a study, but can we not it made me think of a shrine. There's some religious places, people, and have a certain area in your house and you have your shrine of whatever statue and some candles and whatever. Can we have a spot that is that place for you? Which, in all honesty, that's what this is my new office and studio. I put it all together. I put the books that have changed my life, that matter to me, and a lot of people we've interviewed right here on this, so that it's a place that for me, it helps me engage. And it's that shrine in essence. But is that not something, again, from a discipline standpoint, that we could all do to a degree to foster the reality of this in our life?
Oh, yeah. Now, it may not be easy, but If you are clear on what would be desirable, then you can start to move toward that.
Mm-hmm.
On our property, we have an old barn that we've rehabbed, and we call it the sanctuary. And people experience that sense of peace when they come there. But in that is my office. That didn't happen overnight. That happened over a period of years. But I was so clear in my vision of what I wanted that now I have exactly what I had seen in that vision. So sure, you start with where you are, even if it takes a while to get there. But in the meantime, I mean, I always had places to go where I really could study and concentrate. I know a guy right now who has a little space under the stairs that goes to the upstairs in their house. So it's really like a closet. Mm-hmm. So he just opens the door. That's his space. That's okay. But it's a dedicated space and he can grow from that.
Okay, so when we talk about investing in oneself, and we started off talking about this a little bit, the Ziglar, of course, has these 7 spokes of the wheel of looking at those different areas of life, and that's one that you have always used as well. So we can look at that, and as an area for those of you who are wondering, where should you start? I guess it would be, where do you have a need? Where do you want to progress? Which takes us to, okay, to begin with, if you're going to look at investing in yourself, where do you need to? Right now, is there some relevance for everybody listening out there to say, okay, what's the most acute need that you need to grow right now? Is it health and wellness? Is it, not that we can't do in all the areas, but if there's a budget of money and a budget of time and whatever, can we do an audit? Should we do an audit in those spokes in essence? And guys, you can type in Ziglar Wheel of Life and you'll find a zillion different versions of it. But to look at those, do an audit and say, what's the most acute place? If I'm limited, which most people are, time and money, that I need to invest in, and then start there.
Yeah, and it could be in a variety of areas. We're talking here pretty much about the monetary return of investing this 3 to 5%. I really believe in that, but that doesn't preclude somebody to say that they want to go on a yoga retreat, or they want to go to a nutritional class, or they want to start having a massage therapist, come in once a week. Those kind of things that may not be directly related to money, but I believe so strongly in the principle that even there, rather than seeing it as something just selfish, I believe in the power of you to be a better parent, to be a better person, and to be more able to give in ways that serve other people well, even if those things don't seem to be leading to a direct financial return. But for me, I mean, it's really easy for me to identify those things. Like we're on our way to a conference as we speak. And in that, I'm not looking for ways to increase my income. That's not the primary focus at all. I'm looking for ways to be more impactful, ways to serve people more effectively in doing what I do, helping people to find their purpose and passion and live that out in work that's meaningful. But I know that in doing that, money inevitably shows up. Mm-hmm. If I can do better what my purpose is, money is going to show up in ways that I can't even expect it or describe it.
Well, and to money, even if we look at the wheel, the Ziglar wheel there and look at that, and of course the point is having balance in your life and not a big deficit in any one area. And part of the essence of that is it will affect every area. So right now, and of course this is a platform I love, if my health and wellness is going to pot, it is limiting my ability to do my job, to be creative, to have critical thinking skills, and to do my job well, progress in it, and make money. I mean, there is some aspect.
They're all so intricately tied together. That's why Zig Ziglar in his infamous Wheel of Life, the 7 areas, if you have one area where you're really struggling, it's like a wheel that's terribly out of balance. You're going to go down the road bumpity, bumpity, bump. It's not pleasant, or it's not a good, enjoyable at all. So they're so tied together, inextricably tied together. If you do something to make you better in one area, I work with a lot of people who have been through our friend Dave Ramsey's material on finances. I love working with those people. If those people got out of debt and are successful in that arena, I know they're great candidates for me because they've already proven that they can see a plan of action and execute it. Absolutely. They have the self-discipline to make it happen. I love working with people who have proven success in another area of life when they come to me and want some work in their career area.
Yeah, I think about that with weight loss. You show me somebody who's lost 100 pounds.
Yep.
Man, they've got some skills.
Absolutely. They're going to be successful in other areas of their life.
Yeah. Okay. With you putting, and you like to put numbers on things like 48 days to the work you love. and putting 3% of your income as a reasonable, below 50,000. After that, 5%. So, a lot of people like to look at six figures. So if you're making $100,000, that's $5,000 that you're going to put towards a lot of books, a lot of classes, a couple of nice conferences. You're getting ready to go to one. I'm going to go to one. I think I'll probably spend, $1,000, $1,500 or something on that. So that's the money. Now, obviously, though, from a daily habit, if somebody's going to step forward tomorrow hearing this message and go, okay, yes, I get it. I've got to invest in myself. I'm committed. Let's go. There's also going to be a time factor on that. And not to put you to tell us all exactly how much time should we spend, but there is somewhat of that. Just when is it going to happen? Give us some help on that, of looking at where are some viable ways to look at the time investment that's got to come along with it. Is this daily? Is this weekly? Is it monthly? Is it a certain amount of time? Do you see some, 3% and 5%? Are there some relevant amounts that, if you're going to be healthy, if you're going to progress here, you should be spending somewhere in this range. You're going to need to, again, daily, weekly, monthly. I don't know. Help us out.
Okay, sure. Boy, great question. Yeah, there has to be that component because these things don't happen in and of themselves. It does require the time investment, which just accelerates the process again and makes it more real. I would encourage people to be spending 10 to 15 hours a week in this personal development.
Okay.
That could be combined with developing a business idea, as an example. Or if somebody is training for a marathon, or they're losing weight, or they're weightlifting or whatever, but 10 to 15 hours a week in this category of personal development, so that we don't get locked into this, I'm too busy for that. No, you're not too busy for this. If you're too busy for this, your life is likely to decline rather than go up. So, but be conscientious about 10 to 15 hours a week. I spend at least 2 hours a day just in the reading, listening category. There are other things that doesn't account for going to conferences, seminars, online courses, and all, but at least 2 hours just in that category, because I've seen the powerful return of doing that in my own life. At the lowest point in my life financially, with a business disaster that was choking me, I dedicated at least 2 hours a day to that. And I attribute that one factor to my ability to come up out of that cesspool more than any one thing. 2 hours a day investing, not just in out there selling, grabbing something, making something happen to get us out of debt. No, 2 hours. It's almost like breathing. If we just exhale all the time, ultimately you're going to turn blue and pass out. Your body will force you to stop and inhale. Right. This is that process of inhaling, 10 to 15 hours a week.
Okay. And when I talk to other folks, your peers, that's what we often hear. We hear Ziglar, he spent, I think his was like 3 hours a day reading. And,
all right.
And okay, so great. So understood that. But I do want to point out to folks, to everybody who's listening, because I know there's got a lot of people who you're burning the candle at both ends. You don't have a whole lot of time. You got family, you've got, high demands. It's difficult to hear that. So I don't want you to discount it. Aaron McHugh, who we had on the show, and I don't remember what number it was, talked to me. And I don't know if he talked about it in the show, but he talked about it later. And it was the aspect of being a pro. What does it mean to be a pro? Now, he was talking on an athletic side in this reference point, and it was a pro athlete he was talking to, and the guy it was a soapbox of his. And he said, look, people think that because we're pros, we spend X amount of time every day, all the time, training. Well, obviously we invest a lot there too, but part of it too is that we just do something every day. And he tells a story of getting to a hotel. It was between that, it's raining outside, and he had something like 8 minutes. And he's like, well, you just forget it. And he said, no, be a pro. He's talking to himself, a little self-talk. He put his shoes on. He went out and ran in the rain for 8 minutes, came back and did it. And what it did for his person, but also just the discipline and building that habit. So if you would just speak to that, because there's people out there that are listening to that. So give them, if they've got 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, speak to that, and where they can do that. Of course, Zig, if they've been listening along, they know about automobile universities. Talk to it on that. But then also, and I've heard this from you my entire life, if you're going to hear this message and say yes, agree to it, take action on it, you're going to add to it by proxy, something else has to be given up.
Yes, but to me, that decision is pretty easy, and I don't want to make this process oversimplified. But we all have the same amount of time. We have 168 hours a week. That's what Mother Teresa had. That's what Thomas Edison had. Einstein. That's what Bill Gates has, Richard Branson, anybody. 168 hours. We can't expand that. But then we get to decide, how am I going to invest those 168 hours? Sometimes in working with successful people who feel really overburdened and overwhelmed, I have them do a 2-week time log. Just track your time. We aren't making any changes. Just track your time so we can monitor how you're spending time. But if we start with that and recognize that if somebody works reasonably 40, 50 hours a week, my gosh, I work always at least 50 hours a week. So we start with that. We deduct that from 168. I need a lot of sleep. I'm going to sleep 8 hours a night. So we do that. But then I still got a lot of time. It's just that I say no to a lot of things that other people may say, well, sure, I'll go to the ball game. Sure, I'll sit in front of the TV for 3 hours and watch, the basketball finals or whatever. Well, there are just a lot of things I say no to because I consider other things to be more important. That's really what it comes down to, is simply deciding what is most important. We always have time enough for what we consider most important. So somebody that says they don't have time, no, they get the same time everybody else does. They've just made different decisions about what's really important.
Okay. So we're back to the making better decisions, fighting against our flesh that may want to watch the TV. Not that that's the devil and that, but it is. Okay. So I've found some running races. I kind of want to get back into the running race scene again. So I'm waking up in the morning. Well, I have been waking up early, but I'm having to add that in. So I'm waking up earlier. Well, getting rid of my sleep doesn't work too well. So it's forcing me to go to bed earlier, which is taking away that time that I would watch TV, that I would do whatever on that. And that's, well, so what it brings us down to, and this is probably a good place to wrap up on, is before embarking, if somebody hears this, I know it'll resonate with a lot of people, maybe everybody. It's going to resonate. Who's going to hear this and go, no, that's stupid. You wouldn't be here listening to the show if you did. So you're going to resonate with it. But if you're going to take action on it, we all know as humans that it's not going to be difficult. Our flesh is going to be balking against this naturally every day that we look into this. So to begin with, I would imagine you'd have us stop for a moment and go, what is it that we want? Outline our goals. What is our motive? What are we okay with not happening if we don't do this? And yada, yada, yada. I mean, where do you usually start there? I know that that's a frustration with myself. There's a lot of things that I'll say, gosh, it sounds great. But unless my motive is strong enough, I know I'm going to fail, never start.
Yeah, you're really onto something here. My gosh, we could devote another hour to this because effort is not enough. I recently had a guy, his name is Phil Theodore, come in and speak to my mastermind. In January and February last year, he rowed a boat, ROWED, rowed a boat across the Atlantic, 3,300 miles, 40-foot waves, tethered in, thrown out repeatedly. Unbelievable story. I'm like, why would you do that? Just to prove that you can? No, that's not enough. That's not enough. There has to be more than just effort. There has to be courage that comes above that. But ultimately, there has to be virtue. There has to be some kind of value that drives us. We have to believe that where we're going really matters. I have to believe that I have a contribution to make to people, and I want to stay vibrant and alive and healthy and able to do that, 10 years from now, as well as today. So I do things today that invest in the kind of person I want to be 10 years from now. We have to believe that there's a value that we're drawn to. There's a purpose. There's a reason.
That's where I thought you were going. I think you're encapsulating here is a higher calling, a higher purpose.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Without that, this is all just activity. This is all just, mice running on a wheel. That's not enough to make us do it. No, that we have to identify our why in advance. There's been discussions about that, but yeah, identify your why. Where are you going? What do you want your life to look like 3 years from now? That's what will determine how you spend your time tonight.
Yeah.
And it can be, we know that if you spend 20 minutes a day reading, you'll read a good book a month, 12 good books a year, that alone can transform a person's life. There are a lot of people who don't do that. The average college graduate doesn't read one book a year. It's horrendous to think about it. It's so easy to open the door to put yourself in the category of high achievers, high income earners, high anything you want it to be, if you just take those little tiny steps of action.
Something in this nature that you exemplified to me as a kid. You and Mom were both pretty open about your dreams, desires, and goals and would state it. I've never really thought about it till now, but that's a habit that if there's something that I want to go forward to and I want to increase my income, well, why? set it down. What is that why? What is that thing that I want to do? Clarify it. Even if I think I know what the reason is, let's clarify it and then speak it out loud, make it exist, which to me is a big deal. So if I tell my family, look, I really want to, for us as a family, for you guys, as you grow up and have kids, I want a beach house. I feel like that's be something important for how we're wired, what the outdoors does for our souls. I want that. It makes it exist. But for me, it also just puts my feet to the fire. I got to admit, sometimes I think that I will evolve and mature to a point where it's not the case. I'm pretty consequences driven. If I'm going to do something, it's better for me to you told a story. I don't know if that was I assume that's a publicly known story. It's a story of the SpaceX guy and something that was done where he had an idea. He put it out here and committed to it before is that not common knowledge? Before it actually existed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter Diamandis, SpaceX project, but when he put his first kind of big idea out there, and it was essentially to have a team that would go into space, come back, and then do the same thing like in 2 weeks, because commonly the equipment that you use is destroyed in doing that once. Well, he offered a $10 million prize to do that the first team that could do that. He didn't have the $10 million. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an issue because it was such an outrageous kind of goal. He had people begging him to be the sponsor for that, to put up the $10 million, to have their name associated with it. I love that idea. Put out a big why, a big goal, and you'll have everybody, providing resources and ideas to help you in that direction.
I love the accountability. We had a guy that I knew named Ken come to an event years ago. He was morbidly obese and wanted to lose weight. And so he signed up for a 5K 6 months down the road.
Wow.
Signed up for a marathon a year later, registered, bought the plane tickets ahead of time, reserved the hotel, and then told everybody about it. So if that dude does not come through, he's out a bunch of money. He's going to feel ashamed to everybody. And what that did is it put his, put his pants on fire. And so he showed up at work, told everybody about it there. And now instead of sitting down and having his big lunch, he would eat something small at the desk and go out and walk. People joined him. So now there's a group that's going at lunchtime. It's this great story. But I just thought, man, the guy won by putting his butt on the fire day one. So in that, as folks are listening, you're struggling with your motivation and pulling through, actually seeing this through, taking action, being consistent and walking it out. Are there some things that you can do in this nature? There was you probably know it better than I do. There was some kind of a movement, an idea that was like the $1,000 something. And the idea was, okay, you state something that you're going to do, a goal, give a buddy or dad or whatever $1,000 and say, if I do not meet this at this date, you get to give it to a charity that I hate, something like that. Does that ring a bell? Okay. It's brilliant.
It is. There's a lot to be said for putting yourself on the line like that. Now, in doing that, I would encourage you to find people who are going to encourage you. Find people who believe in you and in that goal, who maybe have had success themselves. The reason I continue to go to conferences is not to get new content or new knowledge, but it's to rub shoulders with people who are also on this same path that I'm on, so that I get to spend time with them. Because spending time with them will keep me motivated, not just accountable and that they're going to call me up and say, hey, did you do that? But just knowing that we're on this path together. So I want to hang around people who I know are on this path, not people who are going to say, nah, you can't do that. It's never been done. You can't do it. You're a loser. Nah, so choose carefully the people that you share your goals with as being people who are going to cheer you on.
Okay, but better than giving $1,000 to somebody to hold your feet to the fire, that is somewhat of, again, where we began, investing in yourself, taking a portion of your hard-earned money, go out now and spend it on, again, personal coaching, on a membership to 48 Days Eagles, or going to an event like the one that you're going to. I mean, we talk about ZLC, Ziglar Legacy Certification. It's a big investment, but the people come there are 100% sold in. They feel like they've got to make something happen with it. That's beautiful. You've got, what a couple of events you've got coming up?
Coaching with Excellence, our kind of premier event, teaching people how to position themselves and profit from being coaches. Innovate, people who have ideas. I mean, musicians, artists, sculptors, comedians, people who have a skill, but they don't know how to create an economic model for that.
Okay. You know what? We'll wrap up there with me pitching him, because Coaching with Excellence. Sorry. Let's go to 48days.com and you can go find the Coaching with Excellence. We talk a lot here about ZLC, Ziglar Legacy Certification, coming in and understanding the principles that Zig Ziglar taught and how to not only take those on for yourself, but then to teach them to others. And you actually then have the Ziglar name behind you. You're licensed to do this on a coaching standpoint. It's awesome. And I, of course, recommend it dramatically. However, what I do love and would put in union with that is coaching with excellence, because it's going to tell you about the business, the lifestyle of being a coach, being a consultant, which we have a lot of people. This is what you told me probably a decade ago, and why we did a venture. I got to do it with you back then. That was, I guess, the seeds of what you're doing now, which is saying there's so many people, and I know there's so many in the Ziglar audience where you have so much to offer people. If you're sitting across the table, this is your words, if you're sitting across the table, you have great value to give to somebody else and to lead them, guide them, coach them, counsel them. However, it's moot if you don't find somebody who will trust you, that you sold, that will sit across from you so that you can do that. So the business side of coaching, I would, I think from your standpoint, you would say that is the biggest downfall of it. We got people with good info. They just don't know how to do it. And is that pretty much the heart of coaching with excellence?
Oh, it is. Yeah. We encounter a lot of people who have acronyms after their names because they're certified by multiple organizations. They know how to coach well if somebody is sitting there in the room with them. They don't know how to create a business out of that. They don't know how to leverage their unique intellectual expertise into other kind of products and revenue streams. Those are the kind of things that we talk about.
Okay. Well, folks, go to 48 Days, go to Coaching with Excellence, make your investment in yourself there. If this is something that's of interest to you, tell him that I sent you, because he'll send me a thank you card. But hey, thanks for being here. Again, investing in yourself. Turn the podcast off and think about this. Audit your life. Look at the Ziglar Wheel of Life if you want to, and look at where you feel like you need to invest it. Talk with your spouse if you need to, and discuss this necessity for your personal success. Dad, thanks as always. A blast doing this with you.
Absolutely. Pleasure being here.
Folks, thanks for tuning in as we inspire our true performance together, and we'll talk with you in the next Ziglar Show.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us on this short drive. Again, that was my dad, Dan Miller, who passed away in January of this year, 2024, but whose messages are still changing lots of lives. You can find him and all he has to offer at 48days.com. Got a question or comment for him, for me, on what we talked about today? You can find me at kevinmiller.co. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further, and most of all, enjoy the ride.
Yeah,